In this vlog, I will discuss God and God's interaction with humanity. But before I begin, I need you to know that I'm a materialist. I only sound like a Christian theologian. By materialist, I mean I agree with the theory that nothing exists except matter. In other words, I don't think that there's anything that is supernatural. So, how exactly will I be speaking about God, whom most people associate with the supernatural? Well, you'll just have to watch to find out. In describing God to the philosophers in Athens, the Apostle Paul shares what I believe to be a very important insight, a phrase that sticks with me. He says in Acts 17:28, "For in him we live and move and have our being." It's very poetic language. In fact, the statement is treated as if it's merely a poetic description of the omnipresence of God by most people in Christian faith communities. For them, if the verse were to be taken literally, it would sound like pantheism, the belief that reality is identical with divinity and that all things compose of an all encompassing God. But was Paul merely describing omnipresence? I don't think so. The Apostle Paul uses similar language as metaphor throughout his writings to describe the Christian believer's interaction with God and with each other. 1 Corinthians 12, for example, Paul speaks about the distribution of spiritual gifts and the roles of various members of the body of Christ. He says that the body is not made up of a single part, but of many parts that bring to the body specific functions. You have the hands, the feet, the eyes, the ears, the nose. They all serve indispensable functions that make the body what it is. Every part necessary to make up the whole. This metaphor serves as a useful thought experiment. Let's take Paul's statement in verse 12. "For even as the body is one, and yet has many members, and all of the members of the body, though they are many, are one body, so also is Christ." Now apply this text to the basic structural, functional, and biological unit of all organisms, the cell. The human body is made up of 30 trillion cells, each assigned a specific role to play in the body. Now think of the magnitude of the number of this smallest member of the body. The Earth is estimated to have 7.8 billion people. That means that there is almost 4,000 times more cells in the body than humans on Earth. Yet they work so seamlessly together that we give no thought to their individuality in our day-to-day lives. Each cell is an individual organism that performs a specific function. In fact, there are about 200 different cell types in the human body. Each cell type represents a function necessary for the functioning of the body as a whole. Individual cells combine with neighboring cells to perform one of the many life-sustaining functions that the body does, whether it's creating an organ, vessels, or even nerves. The combination of these cells, in a way, constructs the body and maintains it. Each cell begins as a stem cell with the ability to function anywhere in the body. The cell specializes and locks into a specific function when placed and confined in a particular location in the body. This is a result of internal genetics and external factors such as chemical and physical contact with other cells that determine what type of cell a particular cell will become. But now God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body just as He desired. Now suppose an individual cell decides that it no longer wants to perform its assigned role. The body would recognize the issue, and immune cells would be dispatched to destroy the abnormal cell known as a cancer cell. But if the cancer cell multiplies at a rate faster than the body's immune system can respond, this would result in a growth called a tumor. The cancer has the potential to invade or spread to other parts of the body, ultimately resulting in death. The answer to the question that the Apostle Paul asked in verse 19, if they are all one member, what would the body be? If a single cell took on a role that is outside of its function, it would destroy the body. Let's conduct a thought experiment. Imagine the cells of the body were self-aware, conscious like you or I. Better yet, imagine yourself as a cell. Let's say a muscle cell that's a part of the leg. You would be specialized to form a fiber form, and your function would be to contract and release. This action creates movement. As a muscle cell, you'd be confined to a particular part of the body and only interact with neighboring muscle cells, blood cells, nerve cells, among others. Because of the location in the body, you need to rely on other cells to tell you about the body. It is through these interactions you come to understand what the body is. Neurons tell you when the body needs something from you, and they are also the way that you communicate to the body your needs. Blood cells are the way that the body carries resources to you and takes away things that you don't need. If you have an outside view of the body, you would understand yourself to be a part of the body. But you don't. From your perspective, you're merely a cell serving the needs of the body, with limited knowledge about what the body truly is. You're unfamiliar with any other area besides that leg muscle in which you reside. And you may not even know that there are other cells in the body that have quite different functions than yourself. The efficiency of the body is a marvel to you. It supplies all of your needs, and sometimes even before you ask. In times of distress, you tell the neuron about your pain, and the body responds to address it. For example, suppose you were cut, and because of your limited function and location as a cell, you can't do anything to resolve the issue yourself. The body would come to the rescue, and for you, it would miraculously provide that healing. You don't know how, but your prayer for help was heard and answered, and in this way, the body becomes godlike to the cell, an all-knowing giver of all good gifts. The benevolence of the body towards you feels special. You correctly assume that the body is concerned with your welfare, which it is because it is concerned with the overall welfare of the body, which you are a part of. But you may also incorrectly assume that it is more concerned about you than it is of any other cell in the body. That mistake is a form of pride that leads an individual cell to lose focus on the overall health of the body and to hyper-focus on their own well-being. So much so, you may be tempted to use more of the body's resources than necessary. You become cancerous, and the body has to eliminate you or risk the entire body being destroyed. And if one member suffers, all members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all members rejoice with it. Verse 26. Suppose you're not the cancerous cell, but a neighboring cell. You witness the battle going on between good and evil as the immune cells fight the renegade cancer cells. To you, the battle seems lost, and you cry out to the body through the only means you know how. You communicate through your neurons. To your surprise, one day, the other cells begin to part, and an object that seems to appear out of nowhere enters the body and removes the tumor. Being a part of the body for as long as you have, you know all of its mechanisms, and to you, this is not one of them. This is not anything you recognize or understand. It is a miracle, and you praise the body for answering your prayer, which from the body's perspective is merely surgery. Now let's come back to our reality as we know it. And in the words of the Apostle Paul, in God we live, in God we move, in God we have our being. If taken literally, we function much like the cells of our body in this universe. We are born blank slates with our specialized functions and roles to be determined both through the influence of internal genetics and the external factors also known as nature and nurture. When our lives are lived in such a way that are harmonious with the environment in which we live, we feel a sense of purpose. When it doesn't feel like we are in harmony with our environment, we feel a sense of discomfort that pushes us to pursue other endeavors. We also become aware of the disproportionate amassing of resources and wealth to the harm of society. In a way that we are concerned with the overall health of our bodies and by extension individual cells. If it is proper to say it this way, God is concerned with the overall health of the cosmos and by extension us as being individual beings within that cosmos. But it is important that we don't become deluded in our understanding of God's concern for us as individuals. The concern for the cosmos in the scope of things goes beyond just humanity or individual human beings. As the psalmist says, "What is man that thou art mindful of him?" This is not to say that you should have a deflated view of yourself either. Jesus says, "For this reason I say to you, do not be worried about your life, as to what you will eat or what you will drink, nor for your body, as to what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Look at the birds of the air, that they do not sow, nor reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worthy much more than they?" Interesting fact. There is a songbird of North America that migrates to Brazil for the winter. Biologists who have studied this bird discovered that its date of migration changes from year to year. When they look closely at the data that they've collected over 2 decades, they discovered that the birds leave early for Brazil in years that turn out to be intense hurricane seasons. The data shows that somehow these birds know to start their migration earlier. This may help them to avoid strong storms when they cross the open waters of the Atlantic. Migration among birds seems to be instinctive. The birds take clues from the environment, most scientists think, but in this case, how would they know months ahead of time whether or not there will be strong hurricanes? It's a mystery. Some would say a miracle. But I have no doubt that in time, biologists will figure out the factors that lead to this instinctive behavior. The fact is, the laws of the universe govern all behavior. Again, look at the birds of the air. Are we not much more than they? So let's end where we began, with the Apostle Paul in Athens addressing the philosophers, with a message that I think is timely for us today. He said, "Men of Athens, I perceive that in all things you're very religious, for I was passing through and I considered the objects of your worship. I even found an altar with this inscription, 'To the unknown God.' Therefore, the one whom you worship without knowing, him I proclaim to you. God, who made the world and everything in it, since he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands, nor is he worshipped with man's hands as though he needed anything, since he gives to all life, breath, and all things. And he was made from one blood every nation of men to dwell on the face of the earth, and has determined their pre-appointed times and the boundaries of their dwellings, so that they should seek the Lord, in the hope that they might grope for him and find him, though he is not far from each one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being, as also some of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring." As always, I want to thank you for taking this time to spend watching and listening to just my thoughts on some of these things. If you like the video, I'd encourage you to also share it. If you'd like to discuss some of these items, feel free to leave a comment. If you want to receive more of this content, please click the subscription button and the notification bell. Thank you.